Morning guys, it's a Saturday morning here. Lighting's not the best. Woke up at 5 o'clock, hit some prayer with my wife, and now we're getting ready to get into the day. First call of action is actually the Friday wrap-up coaching call with my social media training program. So obviously that's Friday in the US, Saturday morning here. So it's a good way to start the day. Cover off a couple things in terms of content and whatnot from the week and maybe make some adjustments. I've actually got a one-on-one call with the main coach a bit later on in the morning, which will be awesome. The reason I wanted to document a bit of this weekend is, well, number one, to show you guys a bit more of what I'm up to in the day to day, but number two, because there are sort of two big events this weekend, which I thought it would be. There's some key lessons that I've been discussing, which I really want to hammer home in terms of time use and structuring your days and your weeks as a guy on the grind. So that's really what I wanted to do this for. You might hear I've got really bad hay fever at the moment. It was bad last night and I was able to get to sleep. My wife made this like essential oil mixed with peppermint and honey and stuff. And it was really, really good. But I woke up and it's just hammered me. It's just floored me. I've been sneezing all the time while I was praying. But anyway, we're going to get into it. I'm going to carry you along this weekend through the camera and hopefully can edit this up and get it to you guys. Contrary to popular belief, I don't actually have this super complicated morning routine. It's pretty much what are my responsibilities for the morning and what time do I need to start to get that all done. So for me, majority of the time, all it looks like is giving myself 30 to 45 minutes of prayer. I try to do about 30 minutes of silent prayer and then 15 minutes of reading or reflection. And if I can hit that every morning, I know that I'm in a pretty safe place. And then aside from that, it's pretty much, okay, do I need to go to the gym? I'll go to the gym straight away. Am I working straight away? I'm gonna work straight away. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing fancy. I usually have some yerba mate tea, as you guys have probably seen in the videos and reels prior. It's a Spanish South American tea. And it's got heaps of amino acids, theobromine, vitamin B6, B12. It might not have B6, I might have made that up, but it's got a bit of caffeine and it's got heaps of other stuff that helps with your alertness aside from caffeine. So you're not just getting this big caffeine kick like you do from coffee, but you're actually getting like this slow release, smooth release. And then the way that you make it and that you're constantly having to pour it, it's very meditative. It's like, I'm sure it's like preparing a pipe and smoking a pipe. Like it's not just lighting and ripping a cig in 3 minutes, but you're actually enjoying and contemplating while you do it, which is pretty cool. So that's why I'm a big fan of it. Anyway, almost out of time to jump on this call. So we're gonna jump onto that, check how the reels and stuff performed this weekend. I think I had a really good one pop off, which was I'd die for my faith, and then calling you out on all the ways that you're not dying for your faith daily, which is sleeping in, which is skipping the gym, which is not sticking to routine, which is struggling with different addictions. Of course, we're all in a process of transformation, but if you're claiming and professing the Christian faith and you're not fighting tooth and nail, if you're not fighting to the point of shedding blood to conquer yourself and become a better man, well, then I'm going to ask some questions, which is what this brand is for. Just thought I'd show you guys here as well, all the chads in the Christchurch chapter. We're pretty much checking in every morning, hitting the 5 a.m.s, 4 a.m.s, 6 a.m.s. It's a great way to stay accountable, especially during the week. Like obviously the weekends, your schedule's going to be a bit different, but if everyone's sort of keeping that consistent routine, I know Jay's been getting the 5 a.m. starts every day this week. It's really helpful to just have somewhere to check in, somewhere to bounce off the lads, sharing some spiritual reading. Where is it? They may promise freedom, but they themselves are slaves to corruption. It's just an awesome way to stay in touch. I highly recommend this if you don't have your own tribe, your own group. Either join one of ours or make your own, but it's definitely invaluable.
as well.
Yeah.
And really get you cooking on all platforms. Does that sound good?
I think one of the things that I wanted to address as I am about to leave for this barbecue today was the massive issue that people have with weekends. You know, most people will waste them. They'll have a late night on Friday, they'll have a sleep in on Saturday, they'll waste the Saturday, have another late night on Saturday, and then Sunday is pretty much just trying to recover, you know, charging your battery from 0% when it was meant to be a day that you could sort of actually properly refresh and connect with God and the rest of your family. But because you messed up the other 2 days or the previous 2 nights, it ends up being like a really sluggish day and you kind of start Monday on the back foot. So I think the beauty for me is I'm obviously living on the farm and it's very difficult to make these kinds of events. Like this one barbecue that I'm going to now was one that I'd planned ahead of time and kind of organized, and we still have to sort of work the shed. So I had to milk just before leaving, just before going. And that's something that's kind of like a blessing in disguise, because a lot of people would kind of complain and say, well, being so far away, it must suck because you can never do anything. But it's a hidden blessing because just by virtue of me being far away, it automatically prevents you from perhaps falling into some of those traps that other people do. And it forces you to be really intentional about who and when you hang out with people. So instead of going to all of these random hangouts or movies or whatever, you end up sort of being able to pick and choose and say, well, I'm going to make the drive for this one event, being super intentional about it. And it means that you actually spend quality time with people who you want to hang out with. And I'm not saying that I've kind of been using it as an excuse to be antisocial, not at all. But in a world where I think we are generally over-socialized and people need silence and solitude, it's a really helpful thing. Again, you keep it really intentional. And it just means that you don't do it as much, which, as I said, I think that's healthy. So some things to reflect on. I think hopefully I can talk about that a bit more as I go through the weekend. But yeah, pretty much we've got tonight. We've worked on Saturday, we've grinded on the projects, and now we're ready to take some intentional leisure time to connect with mates, to play a bit of sports, put some red meat on the barbie, and generally just have a real good, wholesome time that, man, I'm gonna get tired playing touch rugby, there's no doubt about that. But that actually kind of refreshes the soul. So definitely really looking forward to it. And yeah, I'll keep you posted. G'day guys, I'm not actually recording this on Sunday. Basically what happened is my phone was running out of storage and I thought I'd already transferred stuff onto my laptop and I hadn't. But by the time I realized the files were missing from my laptop, I had permanently deleted a bunch of stuff from my phone. So left a few videos missing. That being said, I've gotten most of the points across already, and what I wanted to discuss now was just 2 little lessons concerning the Sunday. So we had a bit of a late night on Saturday. It was about 9:30 when we got home. People are gonna laugh. How could that even be a late night? So I think we were in bed by 10 or 10:30. Maybe we got home a bit later, but 9:30, doesn't matter. The point that I was gonna make is that one of the other things about the farm is that most of the time we've got to work weekends. So it doesn't allow you necessarily to give yourself heaps of slack. So obviously in the ideal world, you'd wanna be resting Sunday. But I guess having these extra responsibilities, some Sundays I do get off. It's really important to be intentional about that rest time that you're taking. So for me, example, how the Sunday looked was I went to the shed in the morning. I didn't have to wake up super early, thankfully, But then when I got home, I still had the whole car full of barbecue stuff, clothes, etc. So while I guess my instinct would have been to go inside and rest and have something to eat, obviously I had breakfast and everything, but I think it's really important when you have little things like that to take care of them. So emptied the car, checked the oil, fueled it up. With the barbecue, cleaned it, scrubbed it all down, detergent, chucked it back in the garage, ready for the next use. And despite it being like a bit of a chore, the fact that I was sort of cleaning and looking after my equipment is actually quite leisurely of itself. And I put on Bishop Robert Barron's sermon, for example, when I was doing that. So it was a way where I was still doing something productive and I was doing what I needed to make sure that I wasn't going to be super stressed and next time I had to use the barbecue or whatever. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed that part of the morning. Obviously, in terms of the Sunday afterwards, it was still really important that I make intentional time to spend with my wife as well and to spend with the Lord. Unfortunately, that was also a bit difficult because the second thing we had on this weekend, which is what I mentioned at the start of the video, was that we're presenting a talk at one of the youth groups in town, so Christ the Redeemer North Parish. So part of what we also did on Sunday is my younger brother Nico came in and we just finished planning the talk. Now the talk was on conformity to the world, transformation, and unity with God's will. So that's a verse from Romans chapter 12, which I might flash on screen, but it was effectively talking about how these kids are going to be influenced really badly by the world and a lot of their peers, and that they have to make a huge effort and a radical commitment to living a life of virtue and living a life of faith in a world that is going to challenge them so severely. Nico and I both went to this school when we were younger. Nico's 21, I'm 23. I'm married now. I got married in June, expecting first kid in May, by the way, announcement. But yeah, I've been to uni. We've both lived in Aussie. Nico's studying in Aussie right now. I guess the first point that I wanted to make to you guys is that everything that we say today is not coming from, we're not preaching from the pulpit. We're not just saying this stuff because we read it in a book. What we're saying to you today are learnings and truths that we've learned from our lived experience. Like, this isn't stuff that we're making up or that we expect you guys to live and we haven't done it ourselves. This is all stuff that we have learnt and lived. So the expectations and stuff that we're giving you guys now, don't think that this is like for saints or for guys who, have never faced hardships in their lives. Like, this is coming from the ground up. This is organic stuff. Does that make sense? So our theme for today's talk is Romans 12, verse 2. Do you want to read it, Nico?
Yeah. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So it's practically as well, like, ties in really good to the readings that we heard at Mass today. St. Paul and the Gospel as well, like, you do not know the day or the hour. And so our talk is kind of going to take that same theme, and that, and St. Paul says in Romans 12, talks about conformity to the world as being something we ought to shun, ought to be rid of, and then to be transformed by Christ and to discern his will and to live that in every day of our lives. So that's what the talk is sort of going to take its shape from. We all kind of know what that means. Conformity to the world. The world is something that's spoken about often in St. Paul and in the Gospels as something negative. And it's not that the world itself is a bad creation, it's just the world that we live in has been corrupted by sin. And so there's a lot of things in the world that are actually dangerous to us and that lead us away from God. So practically, as men, we have to rewire. We have to rewire the circuit. You're at a crossroads where you want to live for Christ, but every single societal baseline that we are surrounded by is wrong. Every single influence outside of this room, outside of the church, is corrupt. And you don't need to look far to see that. You look at the Catholic schools that don't even live by Catholic morality anymore. You look at the majority of secular people. They go out every weekend, party, get pissed, do drugs, have fun with their mates, have fun with women. That's what people live for. They work 5 days, then have a weekend to have fun, go back home, reset. People aren't, sorry, go.
Yeah, I also wanted to say, like, a lot of our parents and even priests, there's a lot of people nowadays that are around here which aren't necessarily giving you guys what you need. Anyone can read the gospel and give like a sermon about the gospel and stuff, but I don't know. For me personally, the fact that there are so many spiritual dangers in the world, the fact that our schools are pretty much overrun with people that don't believe in Christ at all, they're more than happy to teach you guys like sex outside of marriage is okay, masturbation is fine, it's not a problem, just follow your desires, you can do whatever you want, you can date at like 14 years old. And not only are they going to tell you that you can do bad stuff, how many people are telling you guys that you need to study hard, that you need to go to the gym, that you need to be preparing yourself to enter into the world as a man that's capable, who can provide for his family and who can help build up society? I'm sure you guys will say no, nothing, because that's not being spoken about. You're not getting told to not do bad stuff, and you're also not being given good examples of what to do. And we didn't just tell them this is the bad stuff, avoid it, but we also talked about attachment and validation, which is often what teenagers struggle with. You know, they'll get their attachment and validation from the wrong sources, you know, whether that be girls, video games, masturbation, pornography, a whole slew of things which sort of cause that immediate short-term pleasure. And I think a lot of them probably have the self-awareness and conscience to know that some of these things are wrong, alcohol, other substances, but either they don't have that awareness, or if they have that awareness, they don't have awareness about the attachment and the way that their sort of deeper psyche gets validation from these external objects. So we sort of made it very clear that you've got to give yourself the time, space, and silence to examine yourself and figure out, well, sure, these things are fun and they're addictive, which is probably why I'm doing them. But I guess what's that deeper emotional fulfillment, even though it's not complete, that these things are giving me? And how do I become aware of that? And how can I begin working on that? So a lot of the talk we spent discussing the sort of slightly more nuanced approach about conformity to the world and how to leave those things behind. So I think they found it really helpful. We'd prepared a lot of material, so we actually found that we ran out of time to cover everything, because part of what we wanted to cover as well in going there was dating, because, well, that's a topic that is on most guys and girls' minds at that age. And I think, unfortunately, societally speaking, dating has become a very frivolous and unintentional thing, to the point where a lot of these poor kids, through no fault of their own, are just constantly distracted and stuck in that cycle of texting and dating and he said, she likes me, whatever. And they end up never focusing on the things that matter. So that was a key point that we wanted to communicate. We did communicate it a little bit, but not enough. So we're going to sit down and record a podcast about it, actually. But the other point with these things is that, you know, it'd be beautiful for me to be able to work with Fit for the Kingdom full-time, or have a full-time ministry job. I'm sure a lot of people would like to be in that position where they can dedicate their lives to spreading the gospel and doing events like this. But the reality is that for 95% of us, maybe not always, but for a long time, this is an extra commitment that you do on top of all your other responsibilities. So when it comes to the end of the week and you're absolutely demoed from a whole work week, and you've got to go and commit to helping out these young people at this youth group, it's really a sacrifice you have to make. And you might not get recognition, you might not get praise, you probably won't get paid, but that's a sacrifice that you have to make. Now, we got home about 10:30, and the following morning, of course, we had to work at the cow shed. So it was a 5 a.m. start for me again. And that's fine, because I'm willing to give my life up in that minor way. But I wasn't going to take that Monday off work or use my commitment to the youth group as an excuse to default or compromise on my other disciplines. The next morning, as a husband, as someone who has his duty and responsibility in place. I need to wake up and pray, and still need to hit my workout on Monday, regardless if I've got work. So those are the priorities ahead of me. So I want to make this very important. It's probably not very clear. It's probably not very applicable to a whole bunch of you, but I think a lot of us are involved in some form of other organization or extracurricular commitment. It might be ministry. And it's very important that we don't use these extra commitments that we have as an excuse to compromise on our primary vocations and our normal states in life. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do both. Of course you should do both. I'm a huge fan of these extra commitments, but don't act like it exempts you from doing the regular things that we're called to do as men. Good morning, guys. We're back in the studio. It's Monday morning, just reflecting a bit on the last week. The talk went really well. Sometimes when I prepare these kinds of things, because you're wanting to go in and fix all of their problems, so you can kind of fall prey to the trap of thinking, well, my talk has to cover absolutely everything, which obviously isn't right. But I think all things considered, it went really well. Next time I would definitely like to keep the talk a bit tighter, and as well include, I always forget to do this, but try and funnel people towards Fit for the Kingdom, towards the YouTube and the podcast. Like I did talk about that, but we need like QR codes and like a slideshow of what we do as Fit for the Kingdom. So there's a natural follow through and a follow up that they can go to. Some of them already followed us on Insta and stuff. So it's not like we didn't do anything, but I think that's the kind of professionalism / brand awareness that I need to take into every event that we do and every speaking thing that we do. So yeah, some things to think about, but it went really well. One final point that I wanted to bring to the table, wrapping up this vlog now, which it's a pretty average vlog. I didn't get to record much footage. My phone ran out of storage because I hadn't emptied the recycle bin. So we weren't even able to record the whole talk, which is a bit of a shame. But when it comes to stuff like ministry and youth groups or anything that comes in contributing to the community, for example, you might think, okay, well, I gave this talk, I helped run this youth group, and I had a late night. I got to bed at 10:30. That means that today, Monday morning, is going to be my Sunday, and I'm going to have a nice rest and catch up on sleep and stuff. All of this stuff comes on top of my other responsibilities, if I'm talking about myself specifically. I don't go and do the youth group, I don't go and do this barbecue and then take that as an excuse to fold and compromise on other aspects of my life. So this morning, I was up at 5, I did my prayer, did my client follow-ups. I'm back into my normal life. What happened yesterday, happened yesterday. If I got to bed late, so be it. But today, if today was your last day, you have to live with no compromises. You have to live virtuously. You have to make the right decisions. You have to fulfill your state in life. You have to live up to your vocation. Your feelings and the amount of sleep you got is irrelevant in this. So I think that's a key lesson to take away. I think when you're in a stage of growth, as a man or a woman, just across the board, often what growing looks like is incorporating and trying new things into your life, whether that be habits, routines, workouts, jobs, hobbies, etc. A lot of times when you add in these new commitments, they take time, and they take time away from what you're already doing. So a big part of growth is learning to plug these things in without stopping what you were already doing. Like I don't know, for example, at this point in time, I'm working on the farm as well as growing my brand and growing my coaching business. There does come a time where you have to sort of burn the bridges, so to speak, but a big part of life when you're in that stage of growth as a young guy and a girl is learning how to push forwards different things at once. Study, another great example. I'm also studying. So you kind of have to just learn how to juggle these balls, and sometimes you're not going to get the sleep you want, and that's it, man. That's life. The one thing that you don't want to drop is the talents that God has given you. The one thing that you don't want to do is bury that talent in the sand and then get cast into the fires, as Jesus said in the gospel. So cultivate your talents, use your time, it's always worth losing a bit of sleep if you're able to contribute to these things positively and you're still living your life in an orderly way and living your life oriented towards God. So I think that's pretty much all I had for you. It was definitely a good weekend. I think it's thinking about social commitments and thinking about other commitments like what we did last night, giving that talk. I think it presented a good opportunity to be able to discuss these things with you and also show a bit of my life in terms of how I balance this stuff. Like yesterday as a Sunday, I would have loved to have a day of rest, but you know, I was rostered on at work and I had to contribute to the cowshed, and I was also giving this talk. So I did the best I can. I got some time of prayer in, went to mass, and sometimes that's just how things are going to look. But again, it's about cultivating and working towards that ideal. So yeah, hopefully you guys had a good weekend. I'm going to try edit this up and get it posted probably today or tomorrow. But yeah, it should be pretty fun editing a video because I only edit reels. So I think editing a longer video should be pretty entertaining. But yeah, all right guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe and follow me on Insta to help support this mission and continue growing the brand and get this content in front of more people. All right, God bless.